Good morning, everybody. It is very nice to see you. My name is Bernadette, and I am the owner of the UK Alliance of Wedding Planners. And it is my pleasure to be with you here today. We are back for one of our regular Meet a Member sections. And today I am delighted to introduce you to one of our very lovely wedding planner members and destination wedding planner, which is Valentina Ring from The Stars Inside. Now, today we're going to be talking to you all about elopements and touching a little bit on micro weddings. As always with our lives, any questions that you've got, please pop them in the chat and we will happily answer them for you. If you manage to put your questions in live, then absolutely we will get to those questions today. If you're watching the replay, put hashtag replay, and either myself or Valentina will come back and answer the questions for you. So, Valentina, could you perhaps let our viewers know a little bit more about you and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today, Bernadette. I'm super excited. So I'm Valentina and I run The Stars Inside, which is a business I started back in 2017. Thanks very much so to the support of the UK Alliance of Wedding Planners. So I'm so delighted to be part of this community still. So I'm in North London, that's my base, and that's where I work from. I live here with my wonderful husband, James. But I'm actually Italian and I've lived all over thanks to my parents' work. They worked for the embassy and we moved around every couple of years. So, you know, I have a huge passion for travel and now it's something that I love sharing with my clients. So I specialize in intimate weddings and elopements. And I support couples who want to have really heartfelt, meaningful, beautiful experiences, basically anywhere in the world. When it comes to the sort of services I offer, it's all very bespoke. I get to know the couple and what they need, and I kind of adapt myself around them. So any planning, styling, coordinating, it's very sort of holistic and quite sort of all-inclusive, especially when it comes to elopements. You end up being their travel planner, their stylist. You become a bit of everything, and I love that. So that's why I say that I don't have packages. I just kind of adapt myself to what the couples need. Yeah, I think that's a little overview.
And I know that here at the UKAWP, we are delighted to have you as one of our members, and we have loved seeing your business grow year upon year. And we're very proud of the weddings that you produce for your clients. So what I would love to know more about is the elopements and how this has kind of evolved in your business. So I would love to know a little bit more about how that happened. Did you plan to do elopements from the outset, or did it just sort of evolve?
Yeah, you know what? It's actually a niche that I found myself in very organically. I think because of my passion for travel, because you know, in my messaging, I talk a lot about the importance of experience, about couples doing what's right for them, and just generally the quality of the time you spend with your loved ones. And I think just all of that together has naturally meant that I often connect with couples that are looking to have more intimate celebrations. It wasn't a plan, it wasn't a long-term plan, but I love it and I'm kind of embracing it, leaning into it. And you know, I think attention to detail and styling play a really key role in my work. And again, that's something that I think resonates with couples who are reducing their guest list in order to be able to use that budget to really hyper customize and elevate the journey for themselves and their loved ones. And again, that's something that I love supporting them with.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that I've noticed with your journey as a wedding planner as well, is the attention to detail that you have for design. And this actually happened, you know, I think even when we did the training, and from the very early days, it was very clear that you had that very definite attention to detail and would create concepts that perhaps others would not think about. And I can imagine that with elopements and intimate weddings, that you were really able to kind of go to town in terms of the design. to really create something that is actually for the couple. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think often that is what resonates with them about my work. Often that's how they find me. Sometimes it's the fact that I have a lot of text on my website, and it's all very personal. I talk a lot about the things that are important to me and my values, and I think often when inquiries come in, it's a very, very, we become very fast friends. We have the same way of thinking. We have the same, we place the same importance on the same things. And that's kind of something that's evolved naturally. And it just so happens, I think I was just born to plan elopements. I didn't plan it. This is just what happened.
Yeah. Okay. And when we think about elopements, I think, sometimes we always traditionally think of somebody, running off to Scotland, for example. But I'd love to know more about, the destinations that people are choosing for their elopements. Is it the UK? Is it Scotland? Or are they actually jetting off somewhere to have their elopement?
It's a bit of everything, which is wonderful. I think it depends on a lot on the couple. So some know straight away where they want to go when they first get in touch with me. And some just get in touch with me and they say, we want to have a luxurious adventure. Can you help us find where? And that's also really fun. I think part of my work is UK based. Couples that maybe live abroad and want to come to the UK. The Cotswolds, very popular still. Scotland and Ireland are wonderful places for people to go. And particularly often it's the case that the couple has had an experience here in the past. Maybe they had a holiday here years ago, fell in love with it, and want to come back and experience that together. So that's definitely a big part of it. Obviously, being based, close to Europe, being Italian myself, and having sort of an okay, dominance of the Latin languages, I tend to do a fair amount of work in Europe. So Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, Greece is a big one. I organized a kind of inspiration editorial in Greece last year, and that's led to some really beautiful work and couples that have said, "Oh my goodness, you captured the dream that we didn't even know we had." So,
that is amazing. What a beautiful statement! You captured the dream that we didn't even know we had. I mean, that is
very special.
Yeah, exactly.
I think maybe couples don't know that they are allowed to look anywhere on the map. So often it's just about helping them kind of expand that horizon. And, often I'll listen to the things that they love, and then I'll try and find somewhere that I think captures it. So for example, if they said, we love cities, but we also love the wilderness, I might look up in sort of Scandinavia, because I know that there's incredible cities out there, but there's also some fantastic kind of, wild land. I think it's, sometimes they want to go back to a place they've been together, in the past, like maybe their first holiday together or where the proposal happened. And sometimes they want to explore somewhere totally new. And I think, honestly, for me, I've kind of discovered that again, without really planning it, but I feel like one of my specialties or things that excites me is working in places I've never been. So, like planning at a distance really excites me, and styling a venue that I've never seen is also really exciting for me. I'm actually working with a couple who are eloping to Namibia next year. So that's probably the furthest that I've ever gone.
That is amazing. That's amazing. I mean, I have seen such beautiful elopements when I look at the images, and I think what stands out for me actually is that it's very much about the couple. And you can really sense that. I mean, yes, there are beautiful details around them, but when you look at the photos, you can really sense that it really is about them and not about anything else. And I think if you can put the love that the couple, have for each other, and kind of slot them in a really beautiful backdrop, I mean, it just looks beautiful. I keep saying to my husband, maybe we'll go and renew our vows in Iceland, or somewhere with mountains behind me.
Do it.
Would be amazing. Maybe I'll be calling you. So, and whilst we're talking about that, in fact, do you find that with elopements it is just the couple, or are they bringing witnesses? How do they handle, I guess, the legality and the witness aspect of it?
Yeah, so you know what? For most of the elopements that I've had the pleasure of being involved in, the couple want the freedom of picking how they want their ceremony to be and where. So they tend to prefer to kind of get the legalities all sorted, nice, safe, and easy near where they live, and then really just go to town with letting themselves loose on the ceremony aspect. And really they think of the elopement as the wedding anyway, like that is the you know, the spiritual moment, the you know. So the legal bit is sort of like, okay, well, we've done this, now we don't have to worry about it, and now we've got the freedom of doing whatever they want. And I think it's just taking away that admin, that bureaucracy. They don't need witnesses, so if they want to bring a few people with them, they can, but it's completely up to them. Sometimes they want a celebrant to run the ceremony, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just want to say their vows to each other in private, you know, and that's also fine. So it's it really depends on what, you know, how they're imagining the day to be and what their priorities are.
Yeah, okay. And you know, are you normally there for an elopement?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I spend all day with them and several days with them usually.
And so we've spoken about sort of how it tends to be the couple and how you're there, but what other supplies do you find that they are normally using for an elopement?
So, obviously there won't be as many as a larger wedding, but actually most couples are still surprised at how many there still are. And you know, it depends, because sometimes a couple's vision is just, you know, very flexible, very spontaneous. And in that case, you know, it's more about just embracing what's already in the environment that they've chosen. But most of the time, they still want to create that sort of special atmosphere. And that does involve a few sort of key players. As we said, like a celebrant might be there or might not, depending on sort of what kind of ceremony they have in mind. Definitely a photographer and videographer, very high on the priority list. Those tend to get booked like at the very beginning, to really capture the experience for themselves and also to share it with their loved ones when they come back, because that's something really special for them. Flowers tend to still have a lovely kind of role, because, you know, having that bouquet to remember, having a backdrop for the ceremony, that's still part of that. And if they're having a sit-down dinner, it's still really lovely for them to pick an arrangement that's going to go at the, you know, in the middle of the table. Decor hire tends to obviously play a smaller role, but it depends. If they've chosen somewhere in the middle of nowhere, we might still be bringing in a bit of furniture, a bit of like lighting, plates, cutlery. Often I provide a lot of the tableware myself. I source it myself, but depending on exactly what they need in terms of, you know, larger props, then that's something I help them source. Hair and makeup, a lot of brides still want that feeling of just being pampered in the morning, not worrying about doing it themselves. And obviously venues will be hired for different parts of the day, depending on what the day is like. Catering, sometimes it's just a restaurant that we've taken a small part of a restaurant and made it private, and so that's how the food is handled. Or if it's, say, a boutique hotel, it might be, you know, the in-house chef. Or if they've chosen somewhere in the middle of nowhere, we might bring in a little catering team to create like a really special dinner for them. And then we've got stationery. That's obviously something less about giving information and more about keepsakes. So every elopement I've done has had their own little stationery suite, and I encourage it because firstly, it's something they get to keep and, you know, reminisce over. And secondly, it's a really beautiful thing to photograph. And that photo of a little stationery flat lay that says, you know, we've eloped, that's something really nice to share with their guests, you know, and their loved ones later, you know, if they want to have a party later or if they just want to send it to friends and family. And then there would be obviously outfits. So dress designers, suits, things like that. Sometimes it's stuff they already have. Sometimes they go all out and have 3 outfits. Again, it's totally up to them. And if they need any help with that, that's something I can support with. And then we've got finally more from a practical perspective, things like transport. So, you know, hiring cars, hiring things that get them from one place to another. Sometimes elopements are quite logistically tricky because there's a lot of locations and there's a lot of hiking or there's a lot of driving, and other times there aren't. So again, that's something that I help with. And then a wedding planner, which, you know, doesn't, you know, they don't have to have one, but a wedding planner can sort of support in bringing all of these amazing people together, finding all
Yeah.
the best suppliers, really aligned with them, and just making sure the day actually is stress-free and awesome and fun, which is why they're doing this in the first place most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very close relationship. As I say, like, we help plan the trip. We can be your witness if you need one. You know, we can be your stylist, and just generally being there, you know, every step of the way.
So 2 points I was going to make is first of all, yeah, it's actually surprising that there is still a high number of suppliers that are used. So I think that's quite an interesting fact. And wow, that you have been a witness. So have you been a witness for quite a few weddings?
Yeah, yeah, and I actually really love it. And because I tend to bring my husband with me, he's also a spare witness if we need one.
Oh, I love that. And we have sort of touched on this, but how do you find the atmosphere at an elopement? And is that very different to perhaps the atmosphere that you would find at a more traditional wedding?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think there's a few things to say about that. The first is that the atmosphere is generally more laid back. So, you know, it is more flexible, it is more spontaneous, less planned, quote unquote. Sometimes the timeline of the day is more of a sort of broad strokes guide of what happens before the other things happen and things like that. It's less of a moment by moment schedule as it would be for a larger wedding. I love that, and I encourage couples to try and embrace that as much as they can. Just keep their mind and their heart open, take the day as it comes. But I also do say, you know, we need a broad strokes plan, and that's just because that loose timeline is going to allow you not to be worrying about the logistics on the day. So yes, it's more laid back, it's more spontaneous, it's more adventurous, but you know, there's still a kind of framework in the background that usually I look after, which allows them to just, you know, flow seamlessly through the day. So that's one thing. The other thing I'd say is it is definitely typically less traditional. Because many couples elope to escape wedding traditions that they don't feel represent them. But that may not be the case. They might be eloping for other reasons. And something that I try and say to couples a lot is, you know, just because you're eloping or having a small wedding doesn't mean it can't be wow. It doesn't mean you can't have wedding stuff. You know, like if you love it, if you're excited about it, having that gorgeous bouquet or ordering like a beautiful little cake for 10 people or having a makeup artist look after you and your friends, the Michelin star dinner, the champagne, whatever it is that excites you and that, you know, that meaningful luxury in whatever way that, you know, that signifies for you. You know, you definitely still get to splurge on the good stuff and then think about what matters to you. So just really, really thinking about what investments are right for them. So that's another thing. And the final thing I'd say is another way that the atmosphere is different is what we've kind of touched on, which is the relationship with the suppliers is very tight knit because you spend all day with them. So a photographer will spend all day with a couple, and there isn't even that buffer of like, oh, well, there's 100 other guests that are sort of taking the photographer's attention, or there's not really any gaps in the day because you tend to eat together, travel together, you know, so it's very intense. And sometimes you're saying their vows and it's just the celebrant and me there, you know, so it's a very intimate experience. The makeup artist might be the first and only person the bride sees in the morning. And I just think it's really special. It's something to embrace. And one of the reasons why it's such a unique experience, but it's definitely something to keep in mind while you're planning, getting to know suppliers really well in the run up, having lots of calls with them, meeting up with them if you're in the same country. You kind of need to create that feeling of like on the day, you want to feel like you're reuniting with friendly, familiar faces rather than just staff, which outnumber you. You know, I think it just needs to preserve that intimacy of the day is something that takes a little bit of kind of building the relationship ahead of time, for sure.
Yeah, and we all know that the relationship between, you know, a planner and suppliers is so important, and that's one of the things that we always try to ensure that we're handpicking the right suppliers for our clients, you know, in a traditional wedding. But I can see how it's even more important when it comes to an elopement if you are spending the whole day with them with no break.
Yeah.
So thinking about the timings, sort of a traditional UK wedding, for example, quite often the ceremony would be at 2 o'clock, and they will be going right up until sort of midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I suspect that with an elopement, it's not quite that long. But do you find that there's a pattern in terms of the hours that people are choosing for an elopement?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the things that brides and grooms tend to say to me when they are eloping is, we don't want to rush. And that's fantastic for me as well, because it means we can build all these lovely buffers into the day that allow them to go for a wander, take a nap, have a snack, whatever it is that they need to do to feel kind of happy. So the mornings tend to be much more relaxed. There's a lot of time in the morning to have breakfast together, lie in bed, hair and makeup slowly. Sometimes they get ready together, sometimes they don't. And then the ceremony would be kind of really early afternoon sort of time. And then what's nice about that is there's plenty of time in the afternoon to do whatever it is that they want to do. So whether it's a photo hike, or they want to have a picnic, or maybe if there are some guests with them, they want to go exploring a town. Whatever it is that excited them about the place they've chosen. Usually it's either a landscape they want to explore, or a town they want to get to know, or something. So that whole afternoon is whatever you want, swimming in the pool, having cocktails, whatever it is. And then the dinner tends to just be a sort of private dinner in the evening, drinks. It still has the kind of echo of what a lot of us sort of wedding planners would see as the timeline of a wedding day, but you kind of take away definitely the rush, and because you're not worried about entertaining guests constantly. It's you are allowed to take those moments to just breathe and take it all in, and there is less expectation on like, oh well, now we have to cut the cake, and now we have to dance, and now we have to do this, so it's very, very personal to every couple. There tends to be a pattern, but it's kind of about what their favorite type of day is like, and then we just recreate it basically.
I love the fact that actually they can almost take a break in the middle of the day, and as you said, go for a swim or go for a hike or have a picnic. And I think I love that idea, and then kind of finish off their day with a really beautiful, intimate, candlelit dinner. There's something magical about that, and it will ensure that they're going to remember that, obviously, for years to come. So here's a tough one. What's your favourite moment of an elopement?
Oh goodness. I don't think I could choose just one, but I think because a lot of work goes into creating the experience, and often the work is done at a distance, so neither me nor the couple know exactly how things are going to look when they come to life. So definitely, seeing them walk into a room, seeing their ceremony set up, or seeing their dinner set up, it's always very emotional. We all tend to cry a bit together, and that's really lovely. Also for elopements, I think I'm always there to hear the vows, and the vows are always personal. They're always written by them, for no one else to hear, really. So that's, I count myself very privileged to kind of share in that moment with them. And I think it's what I said earlier. It's not really just the day. You usually travel together the night before, have dinner the night before, wake up the next day, have breakfast. So it's kind of that bond kind of cements through the course of several days. And I'm still in touch with all the couples that I've, worked with on that level, because you do become friends, and I'm very grateful.
Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. And I think, there isn't sort of, a better person that can have that bond with their kids, create those elopements.
Thank you.
Just briefly, what I would love to sort of touch on is, there's been some talk recently, particularly with kind of, social distancing and lockdowns, etc., about micro weddings. So how do you see, micro weddings, how are they different to elopements? Is it purely really in terms of the numbers of the guests?
You know what? You and I have talked about this before. There isn't really like an official threshold. It's sort of, I call an elopement anything between sort of no guests and about 20 or so. Beyond that, some of the logistical requirements tend to change, and so when we're looking at anything up to sort of 40 or 50 people, I treat that as a sort of intimate wedding. A micro wedding is maybe more of an American term, but either way, for me, I still treat them as sort of that intimate gathering. And all of the things that I've said until now about elopements in terms of the priorities and the values, that all still holds. And it's just about finding ways to create that intimate experience for more guests. 50 people in a venue, there's still ways of making that venue feel cozy, making each guest feel looked after. All of that still holds. So I think it's definitely, for me, they're kind of the same creature, but it's just about, there's slightly more planning that goes into making sure that 50 people feel that way versus 10 people feel that way. But they tend to be couples who still prioritize the same things. They still want to be in the moment. They want the experience to be really meaningful. They want the ceremony to be very heartfelt. And they've gathered 40 or 50 people. Maybe many of those have traveled a long way, so they're spending multiple days together, and really just creating that journey and that experience all the way through.
Yeah. I mean, if it's helpful for those that are watching us live or watching the replay, if you pop onto the UKAWP blog, I will pop the link in a little bit later for you. We have actually given some guidelines on elopements, micro weddings and intimate weddings and what the difference is, and some great tips from not just Valentina but many of our members, so I'll pop the link to that a little bit later. So we touched on the priority for those that are eloping. So is every client different, or do you find that they normally say, okay, Valentina, my priority is, and what do they normally say?
I think every client is different. I mean, I think the thing that I'm definitely learning more and more about every single time is the ways in which a large wedding just doesn't really embody everyone's relationship. It doesn't reflect their journey, their passions, their current position in life. Maybe they're saving money for a business or a house or a family or medical expense, whatever it is. There's so many reasons why actually marriage is a thing that matters, but the celebration is something they want to actually reflect them. Maybe it's just their spirit of independence and adventure, and they don't want to conform to the system, or whatever it is that excites them. And I think the priority is always the quality of the time spent together. And I think especially now that we're all missing each other terribly, that's something that is forefront of everyone's mind. Really making an experience where they feel at home, they feel comfortable, they don't feel pressured or rushed. They just want to feel looked after, have delicious food and drink, explore, take the time to breathe it in, like actually come away with it with memories of more than just a party. Like we actually shared an experience together, and that's going to stay with us for a very long time. I mean, obviously breathtaking locations and awesome photos are part of that. It's high on the priority list because, why not? As you said at the beginning, there's, you and your besties, and why not go somewhere awesome,
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that's going to lead me on to a question, which is, if you could choose any location in the world to plan an elopement, where do you really want to go?
Oh my goodness.
I know.
I'm Italian, and I used to be a sun baby, but now I've become very much of a winter person. I love cold weather. I love dramatic mountain landscapes. So I'm very excited to explore with a couple way up high or down low in the sort of latitudes. So head up sort of Arctic way, like Svalbard and northern Norway and Faroe Islands, really high up, or all the way down sort of the bottom of South America and into sort of the Antarctic region and stuff. I'm very excited to head somewhere remote like that one day. It's on the bucket list.
Well, it sounds beautiful, and I personally feel there's something magical about mountains. I adore mountains. I have no interest in skiing or anything like that, but it's something about the aura of a mountain, whether that is snow-topped or whether that is pure lush greenery, that just makes me want to breathe.
Yeah, me too.
Can you just take me along, Valentina? Okay, so let's just see whether there are any questions. Thank you for joining us, everybody. It's very lovely to see you here. So are there any questions? So one of our celebrant members, I think she is saying for her, under 10 guests she classes an elopement. So yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, for couples, if you're watching this, is that for everybody, kind of that threshold is different. So like with anything, if you're speaking to your planners or your suppliers, just kind of explain what you really want, and it doesn't matter what the name is. It doesn't matter whether it's an elopement or micro wedding. Almost forget that terminology and really concentrate on what you want for your wedding. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We have got a question from Monica. Good morning, Monica. So with weddings, the suppliers are often praised for being present, but in a way invisible. Would you say that is different when it comes to elopements because the relationship is so close and personal?
Yeah, for sure. I think couples who choose the team to join them on an elopement, they tend to put a lot of attention on not only choosing supplier whose work they adore, but also whose personality they love. They want to follow them on Instagram, watch their Insta stories. They want to have video calls. They want to feel like, if this person's going to be around us and it's just going to be us in a remote location, we want to make sure that, we can have some fun together. So it's not really about being invisible. It's about being there with them and for them in whatever way they need. So, whereas a florist, in a large wedding, they may not even see the couple. They may set up in the morning and vanish beautifully and seamlessly before anything's begun. But for an elopement, the florist would create a ceremony, probably be there for the ceremony, like watching from a distance because, they're waiting to take down. They would go share that moment of handing over the bouquet to the bride in the morning. It's very much about, these are real people, real humans, real creatives that the couple admires and respects and wants there with them. And the team tends to be purposely small, which means it's very curated. It's not, wherever possible, we streamline the team. So often it's just one hair and makeup artist who does both, so that it's not like a big team. There aren't usually assistants. It's literally just the person who's creating that thing for the couple. So whenever, sometimes suppliers have a double role where they offer more than one thing, so it's really streamlined. So every single person has been very carefully chosen. So in that sense, it's not really about being invisible. I mean, obviously the whole day is about the couple, and you don't want to be intruding and giving, you give them the privacy that, they've so lovingly created for themselves. But you're definitely a presence. You're definitely playing not playing, sorry, maybe it's wrong, but sort of playing the role of like a supplier and a friend and someone to, be there for them.
I mean, I think when I view the wedding industry, I've been in this industry for 18 years, and I always say that actually, in most cases, those of us that enter this industry, we do so for love, and because we have that deep desire to serve our clients and to do our very best for our clients. And that isn't just in terms of the quality of the work that we're doing, but actually it is that connection as well. So yeah, well, I think they sound beautiful. And it's been so lovely speaking with you today, Valentina,
Thank you.
and talking a little bit more about the beauty of eloping, because I think perhaps people don't quite understand it, and they think about what it used to be like years ago, and there is such beauty and such passion and such intimacy with elopements now. So it's been so lovely talking about that. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you to those of you that have been watching. As I mentioned, any questions that you have got for Valentina, please do pop them in the chat, and she'll happily answer your questions. There is a blog post that we have got talking about members' views on elopements and micro weddings, so do go check that out. And of course, we have spoken about how it is important that you are handpicking the right suppliers for your wedding. So that, you know, the way that you can do that is to pop onto our directory. So look at our wedding planners that specialise in elopements and micro weddings. We've got some amazing celebrants and amazing suppliers that can help bring that vision of your beautiful intimate elopement and bring it to life. Thank you everybody for your time, and I will catch up with you next week for another member interview. Thank you. Bye.